Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, joins us on this story. Thank you very much. Namaste, ma'am. We just heard you in the story itself, ma'am, but just to give us an insight, what was this hearing which lasted for around 30 minutes all about, and the merits of the case, and why, on what grounds was this Chinmoy Krishna Das's bail plea rejected?
Well, actually, there's been no ground at all provided. I mean, it's just today, on the 2nd of January, they actually heard the case for the first time, because the previous two times, when there was a bail hearing in December, there was no lawyer who was allowed to appear for Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmacharya. And this is a very tragic incident where the treatment of the minorities is being shown in a way that nobody is caring for their interests. All that Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmacharya has been doing is organized a group called the Sanatani Jagran Jyot. So he is trying to organize the people. We know that this time, although there have been a huge range of attacks, cruel and bestial attacks against the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists and the Christians, yet the minorities themselves are determined to stay on in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. They're saying, we are citizens of this country, we want our rights. So under this Sanatani Jagran Jyot, Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari and others have made a list of 8-point demand to the regime in Bangladesh, and they're very simple request, actually, saying that they want a ministry for the protection of minorities, they want a law for the protection of minorities, they want that all the the terrible acts that have been committed against the minorities should be those who have perpetrated those attacks should be caught and tried, and justice should be done. And it's a very simple list of demands, really. But the government of the day, the regime, the interim regime, has not bothered about them at all. It's never appeared in any of the Bangladesh papers. There is no discussion on this. So actually, the minorities in Bangladesh are feeling very troubled, very worried about it. That what are their rights and what are their rights? And
is this setting sort of a very dangerous precedence for the minorities, as you pointed out in the soundbite to the agency, that this is clearly a travesty of justice? So basically, it's not only about the legal battle that Chinmoy Krishna Das is going to fight, but there's a larger question of the judiciary per se in Bangladesh, the way,
yes,
on what grounds they are going, is it?
Well, the judiciary is completely compromised because the old judiciary was forced to resign. They were like surrounded by the so-called students and forced to resign. And these people have come in their place who are favorable to the interim regime. So that is one thing. So it is the judiciary that has been compromised. Secondly, they are avoiding a discussion on the rights of the minorities in Bangladesh. In fact, today you will be surprised to know that even the home advisor to the interim regime has said, oh, this is a majority Muslim country. Why should we take minorities in the police service? 1,500 applications for joining the police service from the minority communities have been rejected. And they don't want to take the minorities even in the government service. So this is creating a huge humanitarian crisis. It is a travesty of the international system of, respect for minorities, of all the laws of human rights that are there, that there's a complete, boycotting, a complete blanketing out of the demands of the minority community. And in fact, the only interest that the interim regime has is about the lawyer who died. But even in that lawyer's case, there was a committee set up to examine what happened and how he died. But that committee has resigned, saying this is too sensitive a matter, that we will not look into it at all. So you can imagine that there is really no option, no avenue. And I can only hope that the High Court, when the application for bail goes there, that they will give it a more sympathetic hearing than in the other courts. I mean, to show you how no justice is being done, when there was no lawyer appearing for Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari in the Chattogram court, it was the duty of the local court to provide a lawyer. That's the government's duty. That if there is no lawyer available, the government has to provide it. But there was no question of that. The judge did not even ask for it. And the whole thing was adjourned, saying, oh, there's nobody here, so we can't have a hearing. So, this is the kind of ignoring of the legal situation, the penal code. All that is being ignored only because it is the Islamists who are ruling this interim regime, and Professor Mohammed Yunus has made an assurance to our Prime Minister that he will give priority to the treatment of the minorities. But he has not kept his promise at all, because the attacks against the minorities have continued, and there is no way out for them. So I think we have to, really mount a huge campaign to make sure that the minorities.
Do you see that in coming times, ma'am, this is happening? Because ISKCON Dhaka has condemned the move, first of all, the arrest itself. Now, this is clearly a far-gone legal battle for Chinmoy Das's lawyers also. But the larger question of the way things are being handled by the interim regime there on ground, the whole minority safety question, I think it's not only about their demands, it's about their main concerns, their basic right to life, right to live, right to food, right to earning, everything, livelihood.
Everything. I mean, I think it was all epitomized a few days ago. The National Security Advisor of the USA called Professor Mohammed Yunus and told him that they expect that in Bangladesh there should be stability, prosperity, and democracy. Actually, none of these three things exist right now in Bangladesh. There is absolutely no stability. There is no law and order because the police is not functioning. And even the military, which has been given police powers, is not able to control the situation. And there is no prosperity because the economy is in the total doldrums. All the factories are closed, and people are trying to run across to the Indian border to seek jobs in India. So it's a very, very difficult situation. There's no democracy at all because the media is not even being allowed to write about what's happening to the minorities. I can tell you that, the media, for example, in Bangladesh, they were making a huge outcry against the Indian media, saying this is entirely Indian media propaganda. There is no such thing. The minorities are fine. There is nothing happening to them. And this is Indian media propaganda that something has happened to them. Then our Foreign Secretary Vikram Mishri went there, and as he said, he had very frank and candid and constructive discussions with the Bangladesh authorities. And the very next day, the Bangladesh government announced that, there are 88 cases of something that the minorities, they have been attacked and so on. There are 88 cases and 70 people have been arrested. Now, in one day, in 24 hours, after local media had been going to town criticizing the Indian media propaganda, and now suddenly they themselves have admitted that, oh yes, there were 88. But of course, 88 is a very minuscule proportion of what has actually happened. And even their own newspapers reported that in a 15-day period, August 5 to 20th of this year, there were at least 1,608 attacks. So that shows, and the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Unity Council has said there were more than 2,000. So in a 15-day period. So, and that's continuing, now their jobs are going, their economic livelihoods are going, and Professor Mohammed Yunus hasn't said a word about it. Not a word. On the contrary, the other advisors are talking about not giving jobs to the minority. I have not seen the situation prevailing anywhere like this, where the rights that they have enjoyed for more than 50 years, the minorities' right to practice religion, right to jobs, right to equality, right to no discrimination, all those are being taken away from them. Just in the matter of 150 days, And
so,
they're trying.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So, think tanks like RRAG and of course India, the government here, we are closely following the news, monitoring the situation. But do you think that's enough as a former envoy, whether it's media gag or the way things are being handled, especially pertaining to minorities? There has to be a stop, and it's about a larger question of the credibility of the Yunus government, because the world is watching, and there have been reactions, but it doesn't seem to be working. They're all falling on deaf ears.
Well,
what next?
I think that there will be action, and I think the world community is really getting up in arms. I think just last week there was a large group of Bangladeshi Hindus from all over the world, from Geneva, from USA, from London, from all over the world, who came and they are very worried about the situation because their relatives are all in Bangladesh and they're getting a terrible treatment. So that is one thing. We also know that President-elect Donald Trump, who is going to be sworn in on the 20th of this month, has made a very strong statement describing the chaos in Bangladesh, describing the barbaric attacks on Hindus and Christians in Bangladesh. So obviously, the American government is going to be seized of this matter, and there is no doubt that this is an international human rights issue. And even, the UN Human Rights Office, who had been invited to Dhaka by this regime to examine what they said was a huge loss of life during the last weeks of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's prime ministership in Bangladesh. And they said, oh, there have been thousands of people who've been killed and we want the Human Rights Commission to come and have a look. The Human Rights Commission office has sent a delegation twice, and both times the delegation has said we have not been given any evidence.
Okay.
We have not provided any information at all. So even there's a complete lack of coordination, complete lack of seriousness, and all they want is control by the Islamist groups. And they're not to give any right to the minorities. I think this matter should be raised again and again and again without any let-up till there is satisfaction and the rights of the minority are restored.
Yes, sir, but the interim government is definitely answerable on that front. Thank you very much, Ma'am Sikri, Ambassador Sikri, for joining us on this story. Thank you.